A one,
Let's do it.
a two, a three. Welcome, everybody, to another Wine and Comics pairing show. I'm Dave.
And I'm Dallas.
Yeehaw. And today we have a very special guest star joining us in the studio today. The studio. The bookshelves behind me. We were just making fun of ourselves about this. Don't let him know. Stephen Prince is joining us today, the creator-writer of Monster Matador that has a Kickstarter going on right now. By the time this video posts, we should be in week 3 of that Kickstarter. Yep. So let's bring him on and let's get to talking. Come on, Stephen.
Hey, everybody.
All right, here we are.
The campaign is going great.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Good.
We are pre-recording this, but
yeah, I know.
But we are going to assume that the campaign is just absolute gangbusters at this point. I mean, you're an old hand at this point.
Yeah, and I'm going to pretend that I'm rested because I would have just gotten back from I'm tabling at Comic-Con this year.
Ah,
yes.
So it's a good thing it's a good thing we are doing this 3 weeks in advance because or 2 weeks in advance because
you will be dead man walking at that point.
Yeah,
I get the feeling.
Much,
Yeah. You will be ready for a break. What are your thoughts, Comic-Con wise? Let me just take a minute. So, you know, with the writer's strike going on and now the SAG strike also hitting, and so like all the big movie studios and all the actors and celebs, the A-list celebs, the B-list celebs, the C-list celebs, the D-list celebs across the board are all kind of bowing out of Comic-Con this year. So it feels a little like Comic-Con this year. On the one hand, Comic-Con is like, it's a crisis. The people who bankroll us are kind of like pulling out and we're not going to make as buku money. But do you think Comic-Con might be a little more comic forward because of all of this? And are you maybe excited about that? No, not really.
Here's the thing. I mean, every year, a lot of studios have been pulling out. And I think people are just making a big deal because this year, the writer's strike and everything. Yeah. There's probably going to be a lot less celebrities and things like that. But a lot of the studios are still going to have activations and things like that outside the convention. They're still going to have booths on the floor. Hall H might not be as crazy. I think that's where you're going to see most of the effect. But I don't think it's the sky is falling. Wow, everyone's going to be there for comics again, finally, you know? Because also, too, you remember this is announced, you know, a month in advance. I mean, people have had their tickets for over a year now. So it's not like people are going to change their travel plans or whatever, or, you know, you're not getting crowds, you know, buying tickets at the door. So, you know, people have already made their plans. If anything, you know, hopefully it drives people more into the comics and things like that. But people, you know, the people that do the Hall H thing aren't necessarily the people that are even going to bother with comics in the first place. You know, which is fine. I mean, you know, it's not a criticism. Everyone has their own thing. So I don't know if it'll have too much of an effect.
That's a shame. I guess my hope is that not so much that people are coming for the comics, but that's all they're going to find. Or, you know, much more when they come there, like before there were just all these big events. And now it's like the comic events. And I know there are toys, I know there are cards, I know there are video games and things of that nature that are also going to be there vying for their attention. But with I don't know. I guess I haven't been to Comic-Con in a little while at this point. It's been quite some time since I've wanted to go. I mean, it's such
I don't blame
you. As you were mentioning, it's like you come home kind of zombied. It's exhausting. And most of the time, like there are the smaller cons. Like if I'm gonna do like conventions in a year, you know, even and it's been a while since I've done any. If I'm gonna be really honest, but back in the day, like 5+ years ago, like WonderCon, Emerald City Con, like these are the ones that got me excited and hot and bothered. Whereas San Diego Con, I was just kind of like, it's San Diego. I guess I should do it. And of course, all my friends from the comics world are going to be there, so I can go and support them. But the money involved, the expense to be there at that time, to be trying to find room and board, to buy the tickets to get into Comic-Con, to buy the merch. I mean, it's just like, oh my God.
Don't rub it in now.
You're rubbing salt in the wound, Dave.
No, it's. I mean, yeah, it's one of those kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yes.
This is my first year where I'm actually, because now I have a paperback. So so this is my first year actually doing a table because I think it makes more sense with the trade. But I hope that it does drive more people to the floor. I hope that you get more casual people walking into the comic sections and things like that. So,
right.
But I don't. But a lot of it is people are making this huge deal like, oh my God, Marvel's not going to be there. So
Yeah.
That's such a small aspect. I mean, it's a big aspect in the sense of Hall H, but in terms of the floor, it doesn't really affect.
There's no real connect. Yeah.
And it's Marvel Studios that won't be there. Like
Marvel's going to be. I mean,
Right.
Marvel's going to be there. I mean, personally, I would love to see the comic companies actually step up their marketing and promotion a bit.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I'd be curious to see because there is no cinematic presence. So
yeah, I mean, every year it's just it's the standard press release of, hey, we're releasing this book, and this sequel or this whatever, and the kind of excitement that companies really used to bring to the con. I mean, talking like 10, 15 years ago has really been lacking. And ultimately, it's people can complain about people not wanting to go to comics or whatever, but I think by and large, the companies have just treated it as just kind of like, hey, we're here, you're going to come to us, as opposed to here's why you have to be here, here's why you have to come to us, here's what we're doing that's exciting. Right. But if anyone needs a marketing person,
you are available. It's funny. I guess for me personally, me and Dallas both live in LA. So do you. So we all live in LA. So maybe we're a bit jaded in terms of I don't need to go to San Diego Comic-Con to meet actors.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah. I see them. I see them
like that is the last thing I need to do.
Right. Every day,
right. Exactly. It's like I do not. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I can get something signed in a more proper time and place way by going to Comic-Con, but it's got to be someone I just really care about and really think I cannot no other event is going to have them because that
or
event
you
is
can
so hard to get to.
or you can have them sign like an Apple or something at a a Whole Foods.
Right.
Dude,
Exactly.
Sign my
it's funny. As much as I never I can't even keep. So the company Bad Idea, the comic publishing company, they do a really good job, even though I have my own, I can't keep up with them. They always have so many things going on and they're always so time sensitive and expensive, frankly. It's always one of those things where it's spend $150 on our comics and you get this special thing that then unlocks something that then da 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 da. But at the same time, they use cons in a brilliant way where it is there are exclusives and the con is all about very specific exclusives. You only get them there. That unlocks other things, but only people who show up at Comic-Con and go to that table and buy these things. That's how you get involved with what they do. And I wish companies would go back to something like that. If not quite as extreme as what Bad Idea does in terms of how hard it is to take part.
Yeah, I can't be bothered. It's too much work. But I found a whole chunk of their books in a $1 box.
Ooh, lucky duck.
And they're fantastic. They're great books.
Yeah.
But
they are.
But I do agree that one and for their core audience, one thing they do is they market really well and they know how to get their audience excited. They know how to get the people who are willing to do the work do the work.
I'm stunned how well people respond to it.
The involvement that they get from their fans is really off the charts. The fact that
yes.
I don't want to name names, but the fact that any other company can't do that literally every single other company is just basically here's our standard press release for everything.
Right.
I mean, they had people holding signs at, I think, New York Comic-Con, Bad Idea, literally in the middle. It's, and it's great. They think outside of the box. They do what they do really well. And they definitely, but, they're small, but they, but yeah, like you're talking about, I wish you would see company, especially at San Diego, take advantage of the fact that you're at San Diego and not be so like, be okay being in the shadows of these big movie companies. I mean,
right. I mean, to their name, they're called Bad Idea because everything they do is on paper
it's terrible.
A bad idea. Right. It's one of those things where it's like, why would anyone follow this? Why would anyone do these things? Right. But then it works and it just clicks so well with so many people. I'm always stunned how many people get involved and like how sycophantic. And I don't even mean that in a negative way. Like how, so let's just call it fanatic. No, it doesn't sound great either. But you know what I mean? Where the fan base is very zeroed in and all in. They just announced this week that they're doing, because one of the things Bad Idea does is no digital editions ever. Everything is physical print only, and you have to get it that way, and then that's it. But they're actually doing their very first digital only comic, and they're bringing it to Kickstarter. And it's the whole, they're like, and this is going to be, and I agree with them on this actually, because I was on many years ago, I was part of a digital startup called Robot Comics, which was one of the apps that was out there. And we were trying a much more bells and whistles approach to digital comics, where there was so much more you could do, so much more you could develop to make it interactive, to make it exciting on the screen. It didn't just have to be the panel by panel view or zoom, pinch zoom and go back out kind of a thing. But in Bad Idea was basically their argument in their press release was Amazon and Comixology won everything by going for convenience versus, innovation, and screwed us all on digital comics. It's like every other media out there, movies, music, even ebooks to some degree. It's like they are doing gangbusters on the digital front. Like that's a huge market, and they found ways to make it work. And digital comics have actually shrunk since 2016 or something like that in percentage of the market.
Has it really? Wow.
It has. It's gone from like 25 down to 16% or something like that.
Wow.
It's like, it's really low. And so they're like, and to be fair, Amazon also bought Comixology and then proceeded to kind of abandon it. I mean, in every way, shape, or form, it's been a complete shit show in terms of digital comics. There is no real marketplace or any innovation going on anymore. And Bad Idea with this Kickstarter, they're like, this is going to be a very innovative new digital comic, and it's digital only, and it's through this. And I'm tempted. I will admit, might be the one Kickstarter that I go all in on. I was tempted by their big hardcover that they did recently.
I was too, but it was too expensive.
Oh my God, the price. I was like, I can't just.
I didn't really understand that there was the hardcover, and then there was like 8 other little books that were. I mean, I just couldn't.
You're like the 10th person I've encountered that has the exact same response. That price is just.
But they raised something like 100, or they raised a ridiculous. So
amount.
So whatever they're doing, they're
like
doing
$150. So it's
but the fact is, they're still getting 1,000 people. They're still hitting that number to where.
Right.
I mean, most books are not bringing in 250. You know what I mean?
Nope.
In the direct
not even close.
Not even close. So the fact that they can do that, even as bad as the idea of everything they do is, they're clearly doing something. They're clearly connecting in a really real way with their core audience. Yeah.
Yes. As an interesting corollary to the wine world, since we are the Wine and Comics Pairing Show, one thing that I've always found interesting, like I'm always looking for deals, whether it's in comics, whether it's in, like you said, you found a lot of Bad Idea stuff in the dollar bin, and that's my approach to comics as well. Like I'll support people with a lot of money if if it's about supporting them. But when it comes to just feeding my habit, I'm like, oh hell no, I want the deal. That's what I'm looking for. And in the wine world as well, like I'm always looking for that thing where I'm like, wait, I can get a what for how much? But it's like dirt cheap. And that's why I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Whereas when I go to these sale sites or sale groups or whatnot, the things that sell out are the things that aren't actually that cheap. They're like the cult wines that are super expensive. And they're like, instead of $250, it's $150 per bottle. And I'm like, that's still obscenely priced. Like I'm not paying that much. And that thing sells out in like, you blink and you miss out on it. And the thing that went from like $80 down to like $15, no one's touching. And I'm like, that's the thing I'm willing to take a risk on, because it's like, look at that deal. That's amazing. And I feel like Bad Idea in its weird way is very similar, where it's like nothing is inexpensive. Nothing is affordable. And yet they found those comic people where it's like they're doing well in life financially, obviously, or don't give a shit and will spend the money anyway, which is part of it also.
Yeah.
But it's like that's where they're willing to just do that, just dump that money and go for broke.
Yeah, it's you know, it's all psychology. I mean, it's the same way that you know, you go to Costco and there's the Kirkland brand, but a lot of people won't drink the Kirkland brand. They'll drink, you know, LaCroix, even though it's like basically it's the same thing, but you know, they're just slapping a different label on it.
Right.
I don't know if LaCroix is the Kirk, but you know what I mean? There's all these products in this, even in the supermarket, they're literally right next to each other, but one is like, you know, Ralph's brand and the other is, and people always go for, you know, that's just psychology because, you know, no one wants to be seen as, you know, as cheap. And with, and with the wine, you know, and you know better than me, but you know, sometimes the cheaper bottle, the $15 bottle is just as good as like,
well, you know, the price honestly helps the enjoyment.
It does. No, but I mean, like, I drink whiskey and you know, there's stuff that's like $30-$40, which is good. There's stuff that's $100.
What's your go-to whiskey?
I usually lately I've been drinking it's oh my God, what's it called? I like these they're these Scottish ones.
Let's see.
They're from this island, Islay or something.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh my God. They have this kind of like I never remember.
Put on the spot. You're gonna blank on it.
Yeah, no worries.
Here's the thing. I realized at some point in my life that I was sort of an alcoholic. Like, I don't care about what I'm drinking. Like, I'm just there to drink. I don't really care about like the names.
I mean, when
it's got this kind of It's got this kind of like almost like
Gaelic.
Like, it tastes like the ocean almost, with like a kind of like a smokiness to it. It's got this really I think it's called Pleat or something like that. But I always the reason I don't remember is because I always switch around the bottles, and people will give me bottles, and I, like I said, I don't really pay attention to the name on the bottle, like just, you know. Just drink the damn.
No, I hear you.
We're there too.
Right. I was gonna say, like, I'm that person when I'm traveling and I get to like the hotel and they have like, you know, you go to the CVS and I'm like, they got a bottle of rosé. I'm taking it home. I'm taking it to the hotel room. It's fine. It works.
And that's why it's like I'm always drinking a different bottle because I can never remember which one I drank last time. You know, but I know kind of like the style or the flavor.
Right. I think,
and then sometimes
you're definitely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I said, and then sometimes I drink like I like the Japanese whiskey. It's pretty smooth.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, yes.
The Suntory's nice. It's like a $35 bottle. It's really smooth. It's like it's a great, just kind of like you want to just relax and have a little bit.
It's an everyday go-to right there.
Yeah, it's an everyday. Yeah. It's definitely everyday.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, me and Dallas are at the point with wine where it's like we've learned to pay really close attention to the labels because there's so much bloody wine out there that it's like if you ever want to find it again, if you ever want to know, and half the time you're not really sure what you're drinking. Like a lot of things are, you know, they're stamped from a region or stamped like red blend from Napa, and you're like, I'm going to need to Google this or try and hunt down a text sheet on it to like figure out what am I even drinking? It's delicious, but if I don't figure out what it is, I can't, like, one red blend to the other. How do I know if they're anything like each other? So it winds out like wine is one of those things where part of the barrier to entry is how bloody complex and complicated it all is. And trying to learn it all is such a pain in the ass. But if you really want to learn what you like and be able to find it again, you do get into it, and then you wind up figuring out what all the shit is. But yeah. Okay, let's talk your comic at this point, because that's the main thing that we are here for. So Monster Matador, let's talk about to give everyone a little bit of a brief history of Monster Matador. I'm sure you could give one better than me. I'll tell you my brief history with Monster Matador, which is that, and we just dropped an episode recently where I covered the previous issues leading up to this current Kickstarter that's about to go down. And I found Monster Matador during its first, when Steven and artist Fabio Alves started working together on Tango of the Matadors 3-issue limited series, and I believe I jumped in right with issue number 1 on Kickstarter.
Yeah, you did.
That's something
you did.
I did. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if I was a little Johnny come lately and got in on issue number 2. I knew it was before the final issue, but so I noticed that, and I loved the look of it. I loved the idea. It is post-apocalyptic. All the kaiju style giant monsters have suddenly emerged onto the earth and started, mass devastation. This takes place kind of in the aftermath of their initial emergence. And the Matador is a monster hunter and a monster fighter. He is a monster matador who takes on these giant monsters. That sounds like it shouldn't work, but it actually, I mean, it's a cool idea, but it sounds like, okay, you might be able to get a one-shot out of that, but how is this going to be a true blue epic? And it's shocking. It surprisingly works really, really well. And in fact, that limited series, Tango of the Matadors, there's more than one Matador that's taking on the monsters, which is why it is Matadors plural. And when I saw that Kickstarter, I had pledged to it, and I believe before I even got that first issue, I Google searched Monster Matador and the names involved, and I found the old series of Monster Matador, which was 12 black and white issues that Steven both wrote and drew before he teamed up with Fabio. And I bought and downloaded all 12 issues because I was just like, this is insane. What is this? What is this comic? I'm like, how can there be 12 issues of it already? And I do have a soft spot. Like, I love it when art is a little on the rough and raw side. So like Fabio is like he's very clean. He's very cinematic in his art style. Whereas the old black and white issues are a little more underground, like a little more kind of like your old school 80s black and white series kind of a thing, which I was like, oh, it's weirdly night and day, but both of them did it for me. So I was like, okay, this is fantastic. I need to read all of this. Fascinatingly enough, Tango of the Matadors really is the continuation of that 12-issue series. I believe issue 12 even ends with saying to be continued in Tango of the Matadors. Number one, I did want to ask about that. Did you already were you going to do Tango of the Matadors in the same way you did the previous 12, or was that already lined up with Fabio and you knew that?
No, I was in between jobs when I started those first 12. And the idea, and I think at the time I had just gotten the X-Men omnibus, the Chris Claremont and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was reading through it, and I thought it was so cool how, the book never really comes together. I mean, it takes about a year before everything starts to really gel and the ideas sort of come together. And it's just kind of like, okay, now it's the Uncanny X-Men. You know what I mean? Like, but they're kind of like experimenting. They're trying things out. They're doing these things. And the intent was always to get an artist, which wound up being Fabio. And I had come up with this concept like in 2008 or whatever. And it was something that I was like, this is something. And, there was no Kickstarter. Going to a publisher was weird. Finding artists was a lot harder than it is now. It was just a much different. So I kind of kept it to myself. And I kind of, I had done like, I think a little like web comic strip thing and just kind of like for myself. And I started doing that 12-issue series with the intent of only doing a few issues. And if you notice, because I can draw, but I'm not like, Fabio or whatever. But those first 2, 3, 4 issues are very, very simplistic. The story is very simple because I was writing to what my ability was. So it's a very kind of, I think it's like a six panel pages for the most part. I mean, it was very much like, the story was it was very straightforward, not very complex. And as the series goes on, as my drawing got a little more better and I became a little more confident in the drawing, the stories become a little more complex, a little more going on, bigger threats, and, it kind of builds and builds and builds. But essentially what happened was Comixology came out, and I was just like, people were like, oh, just throw them on there. So I just kind of threw them on there. And as I was kind of getting ready to find an artist and really kind of put those I think the first 4 issues away and not really do anything with them, my wife got pregnant, and we had a baby, and like everyone or most people who before they have a baby are like, oh yeah, it's fine, I'm still going to be able to live the life that I live.
Yeah.
So
delusion.
I had the delusions. I had so I had no time. So originally my plan was to really start the book 2016. That was but so just to kind of keep my sanity, I just kind of kept I just kept drawing the book. And I drew, I think it was 6 issues, and then I had the kid, and then I stopped drawing for like 2 years or something like that. And Ryland Grant, who's a friend and another writer, does fantastic books like The Jump, Suicide Jockeys. He invited me to, he was doing a panel at Long Beach Comic-Con about self-publishing comics, and he invited me to do it. And I hadn't spoken to Ryland. We had taken a class at Meltdown Comics, a workshop class, and I hadn't because of everything with having kids and whatever. I hadn't talked to Ryland in a couple of years, and I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to do this because I haven't done anything in 2 years. And then I was kind of like, no, I should probably do it. It was kind of motivation to get back to it. But I felt like I was rusty and I really needed to get my bearings back. So I'm like, let me draw a couple more issues. Then we had another kid.
And the cycle repeats.
So 6 issues. So 6 issues later, I'm finally like, okay, and those 12 issues tell a complete story. It's really kind of like one arc, of like mini stories within it. And it's a weird thing, but the original and we've talked about this before, Dave and I, but my because of my style of drawing, the way I was doing it, the book was a little more quirkier, it was a little more comedic, and I had another artist in mind who was of a similar style, but by the time I was ready to do Tango, he decided to do his own kind of create her own books, and I was looking for an artist, and Fabio had just finished Banjax with Ryland,
right?
And Ryland was like, "Well, do you want me to introduce you to him because he needs work?" And I looked at his art, and I had read the scripts for Banjax, and I was really impressed with how well Fabio, because they were very dense, with how well Fabio drew the book, just the storytelling, and was able to really do everything. But I was like, that's not really the style that I was looking at with the book. And I had written Tango as in a certain way, with a different style in mind. And then I was looking at other artists, and there's a lot of artists out there, and I don't want to be, but it's really hard to find.
Oh yes, my friend.
And the other thing is, like I had the 3 scripts for Tango. They were done, and I wanted to do a straight shot, because one of the things that always bugged me about Kickstarter or whatever is that people would do a book and then be like, oh, well, my artist went away for 6 months, or my artist decided to do something else. And it was really important to me to have a consistency with the book. And so that's why it's only 3 issues, because the first Tango was only 3 issues, because I felt like that was it was doable, as opposed to being like, hey, I'm going to do 6 issues, it's and and then it was kind of like, okay, I'll try him out, and because he had just done Banjax, and I knew he could do it. I knew he was good for 80 pages, because as someone who did over 300 pages of Monster Matador, I can tell you, a lot of people think they can draw comics, but man, once you get to page 2 or 3 and you realize there's another 20 pages left, and you've got to do it's hard fucking work.
It's hard to win.
And it's a reason. I mean, you know, if you talk to a lot of artists in different fields, people who do, you know, storyboards and things like that, they're like, no fucking way, man, because you literally have to be right, you know, director, choreographer, cinematographer, wardrobe, everything, and you're going from scene to scene to scene, and you know, you got to do what the writer says. And
you know, you mentioned that when Dave and I had the agency Killing the Grizzly years ago, which specialized in comic books and comic creators, we would often get these writers who had some sort of artistic acumen, but they devalued what the artist's actual toolbox and role was. And so we'd come across these guys who would start that first issue or the ash can, and they had great energy and fervor. And then like 2 pages in, they were just like, I don't understand how this 33-page, 23-page thing gets done, or how this, you know, a 90-page graphic novel.
And of course, these were always the writers that had like, they had an epic, right? So it's like, not only did they not understand how to make,
and that's the thing, you know, you really, I mean, it's nice to be like, yeah, I want 1,000 people battles page scene for page 1, and, you know, but you really, you know, you don't, it's a good way to lose an artist. But anyway, you know, Fabio sent this test page in, and it's the, I'll tell you what it was, because we moved some pages around in the script, but it's this page. It was this page right here. Can you see it?
Oh yeah.
And this first panel here, I was just like, that's him. You know, that's like the image in my mind of the Matador. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we've done a trade. We've got this new book coming out. And Alex Zief, who's our colorist, I found her on Instagram, and Fabio's a really difficult artist to color. He keeps changing his style, which is fine.
He does. I'm going to comment on that later, but yes.
Yeah. No, please do. And in the first Tango book, you know, Alex had, in her Instagram, she had done like clay sculptures, and she was a colorist. And with Fabio, he was leaving. I don't know what the term is. Not really chiaroscuro, but it was. There was a lot that, like, I don't know. A lot of the details were there, but like they weren't really. They were there, but they weren't as defined as, like, it wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of really needed to understand how
they were attached,
the structure and things like that, you know. And Alex, you know, she worked out great. And, you know, you could just see them kind of really getting comfortable with each other as the series goes on, and really kind of becoming a team. And that was, you know, going back to that whole X-Men thing, to me, like, you know, even though like the first 12 issues sort of continue into Tango is really, you don't really need to, need it. And we're going to revisit them actually in this next storyline, the origin and things like that. It's all going to kind of tie together and weave in. So we're going to revisit that in a way, but
I was going to say real quick, just to interject on this, that yes, having read all the 12 previous issues, I love the fact that it does literally say to be continued in Tango of the Matadors, but I read Tango of the like you could easily, you never have to read those 12 issues. It feels very like that is a great, Tango of the Matadors is a great in media res beginning where you're just like, boom, go. And even
that was that was the thing. The Matador is being carried by the bug, and that was like the reader being just dropped into the
right. And even if you do go, like you said, you're going to start referencing the origin story, and I think that's the fun thing about those issues is it's like because it really, that first issue of the Black and Whites back in the day starts at like the emergence of the kaiju. It's like ground zero. It's the beginning, right? And you could retell that. I don't know if you plan to like kind of retell it in a certain way where with the more modern flavor. But whether you read it or whether it's just references, it's like it really is kind of like the origin story that you don't need. It's just one of
Right.
those things where it's like, but it's wonderful that both in it, it's the origin of the Matador himself, and as you said, it was you feeling out the story and kind of putting all the pieces together, so you can kind of see the story and the world and the everything slowly cohering into something that then there's just a little bit of a jump into what became the actual Tango of the Matadors with Fabio.
And with Tango, and what's nice about it is that it kind of feels like the world feels developed, I think, because those issues exist.
I agree.
But Fabio, I never I didn't rewrite the script for him, so it's a lot funnier to me anyway. I'm a big Peter Sellers fan, and Sellers, his genius is he plays it straight. It's everybody else is falling apart.
Precisely.
The chaos is all around him, but he's just walking like he's everyone else is crazy, not him.
Sellers is a good example. I was going to say, and on a much an interesting comparison to that as well is I'm going to forget Leslie Nielsen from Naked Gun. He's also, even though those movies are completely absurd, the reason those movies work so well in a lot of his comedy is he plays it like he doesn't understand that anything is funny. And anything weird is going on, even though there's literal slapstick happening all around him. And he just keeps walking through it like this is a straight drama, and it's hysterical. Sellers is a bit more subtle in the way he's a straight man and is subtle, but
So, this guy.
Oh yeah.
So this is I love this is my the camera's confusing me. But Fabio, and that's what I love about what Fabio brings to it is I would always kind of draw him like this, but obviously Fabio can draw, and he's and this is kind of the same thing. I love Matadors. There's a Peter Sellers movie called The Bobo, which he plays a Matador, and he plays it straight. It's the same thing, and it's kind of like an influence, but it's you've got all these monsters and this chaos or whatever, and the Matador strolls into town, and he's just he's just like, and it just and that that's kind of what it works, because like it's the same thing like in comedy or whatever, is that I think the mistake a lot of people make sometimes is that you can't always react to the world and the craziness, because that's what your audience is reacting to. That's what everyone else is reacting to. You have to, your characters have to believe that they live in this world.
Picking up on that, let's talk influences going into this world, because one of the litmus tests for me in a new work, something I'm encountering, a creative work that gets me interested, is whether or not I'm interested in the influences that go into this piece. And reading this, I was like, okay, I get the 3 or 4, I get the kaiju, I get how in the hell did you put this in the blender? What space were you in? What demons were you working out personally? What were you running from? What childhood loves were you sort of just reigniting? Like, how did this sort of all just come together in this solvent sort of way? What were those influences?
So I'd like to say I think going back, I have Spanish blood in me or whatever.
Okay.
But as a kid, I had a Matador. My grandfather got me a Matador hat, cap. And so I've always been attracted to Matadors, I would when I was old, when I came around the time I came up with this, I used to watch telenovelas for fun sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're great. There's just, I love that stuff. There's like,
they're satisfying. They're brief.
They're satisfying.
Yeah.
But it's the weird thing, the funny things. I'm not really. I never, like, as a writer, when when I write the stuff I tend to write is comedy or satire. So Monster Matador, writing even though I love action, writing an action book was never like on my oh yeah, I'm going to be a guy who writes an action book.
Right.
But I love 80s action movies. I love you know, I love the kind of B movie action movies. I love, so, you know, I mean, the second book, After Apocalypse, is a love letter to Predator.
Yeah, I was gonna say yes, it is.
Yeah.
You know, which is,
and Predator is an A-list movie, a B movie and an A-list.
It's a B movie with an A-list presentation,
with an A-list, an A-list budget.
Yeah, and one thing I love, and you know, in terms of influences, I love movies. I love B movies that are elevated, you know, by the cast or the director. You know, I know Dave is a big Hong Kong movie fan.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big Hong Kong movie fan. I'm a big fan of Chow Yun-fat. I think he's, you know, the greatest actor of all time. You watch any Chow Yun-fat, I mean, you know, A Better Tomorrow, these are B movie budgets. These are like literally like, but they're elevated by the I mean, you know, by John Woo's direction. You know what I mean? That to me, that's exciting. So like my approach to Matador is like, I don't want to make a slick book. I want it to feel like this is like elevated by the characters, by the people that are in it. And I think that's one of the great things that Fabio and Alex bring to it, is that through their art and through the colors and through just the mood that they set, is that they really kind of add this kind of like weight to it, you know?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's fun writing, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I will say, After Apocalypse, one of the things I was surprised by with After Apocalypse is, and I don't know if you meant to do this or if you were just channeling the Predator love. Okay, but it was the you leaned back into the comedy a little bit on After Apocalypse, like in terms, and which surprised me, because like in Tango of the Matadors, there's a little quippiness going on, but not much. It's a very like straightforward, serious story. And then After Apocalypse, I mean, obviously you even had the things where it's like you threw Ryland in there as a character. You threw a couple of the writers, other comic creators in there as characters, and then of course massacred them in horrible ways. Had fun with that. And then there was just that sort of B movie humor and schlockiness that you injected back into, even though you had kind of veered away from the comedy from the original series when Fabio came on. It was interesting to me reading them all as a piece, seeing your sort of like go out of the comedy and then lean a little bit back into it. And then you're coming, I feel like we'll talk about the latest one that you're kickstarting right now in just a moment, but like the latest one right now, you're a little more in like Tango territory in terms of like, it's much more straightforward, though there's a lot going on. There's a lot of new characters. You're having a lot of fun with all the elements you're throwing into this world. But After Apocalypse was your one where you're like, let me do one more that's just a little more like, let me go back to the humor just for one more tale, and then I'm gonna come back out. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but that's how it felt.
Yeah, I kind of so there were a few things in Tango. There's a group of they're kind of like a gang. They're the Vola gang, and the Vola is a fly, and the monster is the Volagante, who's a fly. And so that whole thing was actually supposed to be a lot wackier and funnier.
Gotcha.
And they were supposed to have this wild like cartoon B logo, and Fabio just refused to draw it or didn't understand. So no, but I'm kidding and I'm teasing him. But what I didn't realize was that Fabio does not speak English.
Whoa.
This is Dallas doesn't quite know this story, so yeah, tell him.
Yeah, and I didn't realize till I think after Tango, and there were things where I get frustrated sometimes because I you know, and I think that was one of them where I was like, dude, drop, you know, but he's running everything through a translation program, and it didn't even like, or you know, it didn't, because Alex speaks she's you know, she's bilingual, and the translation program is really good. It doesn't really read like someone who's running, you know, so I was like, you know, and he'd worked with Ryland, and Ryland didn't mention anything, and so it was interesting because he had on After Apocalypse, he had sent this page in, and I was just like, this is not anything what I wrote. not only is it not what I wrote, but it makes zero sense at all. So I was like, can we just talk on Messenger or whatever? And he's like, dude, I can't speak English.
Wow.
And I was like, oh. And he was
That's
apologetic.
fantastic.
I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I don't speak Portuguese. It's on both. It's on me too. I don't. It's not a big deal. But what I realized was I had to kind of like, simplify or the language of my scripts, because rather than writing to someone that like I'm talking to with, shorthand or whatever, I had to be, a lot more specific. So that's kind of what happened there. And, it was fine, but it was kind of funny because sometimes, you get stuff back and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why there is, because sometimes we go back and forth for like ever. And I'm like, what am I not saying here?
Right.
And that's what and sometimes his things would come back and I'd be like, I don't understand why, but we figured it out. So, so I just changed the way I write my scripts, which is, it's fine. Everything's fine. Right. But Afropocalypse was funny. Afropocalypse was supposed to be the story that came after this arc.
Oh, interesting. Okay. After the one that you're kickstarting right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's Tango, there's the one I'm kickstarting right now, and then there's the follow-up to it.
Okay.
And then it was going to be Afropocalypse was going to be the start of the, it was supposed to have his daughter and everything in it, and it's supposed to be a whole different thing. But after I did Tango, and I mean, if you've run a Kickstarter, it's fucking brutal, man. And you go like, you see people doing them and you're like, yeah, I've got this, I'm going to do 3 Kickstarters a year, 4 Kickstarters a year. And then you're like, I don't want to even do 1 Kickstarter. But I did Tango. I did it. I think it was like a year. It's too much. I needed kind of like, I needed something just to have fun with, because this Once Upon Some Monsters is a bit more of a, there's humor in it. There's comedy. There's, the stuff that, but it's definitely like the Empire Strikes Back part of the story.
Direct quote.
We really get into like, Tango was all about like, here's the character. He's this badass motherfucker. And Once Upon Some Monsters is like, now we're going to just fucking beat him down, and see what he's made of. Right. And Fabio had just come off doing The Jump with Ryland, which is a really, really tough book for him because it's really dense. It's a tough book. It's a complicated book. It's and I felt like, and Fabio, and, we talk and we're all friends, but Fabio was really kind of getting worn out by it. So I thought, let me do something for him that he's just going to have fun with. Let me do something for me that I'm just going to have fun with, because like, I really needed just to kind of like have fun. And that's where, so I'm like, okay, and it kind of worked out because Afropocalypse, I did it during it was during COVID, the pandemic. And it wound up tying into what the monster is and whatnot, which is a virus. And so it worked out. And I, that book is just, it's pure action, it's pure fun. And it was, Fabio was just happy to just like let loose. And I thought it would be fun because in Predator, obviously, Shane Black is in there, who's a screenwriter who wrote Lethal Weapon. And Ryland Grant, screenwriter. So we threw Ryland in there, and I thought it would be fun for Fabio to just kill him. It was like catharsis for him to just
coming out of the Jump issues. Yeah.
Right.
So it was really just kind of like, okay, I need something just to have a little bit of fun and less. I think it really kind of like it let Fabio kind of like reinvigorate and refresh and have some fun. So rather than going into like a more serious kind of like story, it was more just kind of like, let's just have fun right now. Let's just do this, and then we'll kind of do the next one.
Very cool.
Whatever. So So that's kind of where it came from. Yeah. So and that's
yeah. So now talk about where are we with this latest one with Once Upon Some Monsters in Mexico #1. Is this another? Do you know how long this arc's going to be at this point? 4. All right.
You heard it, guys. 4.
So originally, Afropocalypse was a 64-page one-shot, and I was going to keep doing those, but it's just weird. It's just too much. So we split up, and it worked out perfect. So basically, with every story, I try to think of a theme, or I try to think of a way to differentiate, because a concept like this is great, but it can get really boring if he's just, he's walking into town, he fights the monster, he walks to the next town, he fights the monster, and the book is Monster Matador, so he's got to fight monsters, but you have to keep it interesting.
It's your telenovela. That's what it becomes. It goes on forever.
Yeah. So with this one, I thought it would be fun to be, what's the Matador's greatest fear? So now he has to face his greatest fear. And that's kind of the start of the book. And then it's a journey across Mexico. It ends up, he fights a cartel, so, he fights monsters. So there's all different types of monsters. And we explore, in the first story where he fights this Mega Racha, this giant cockroach. He's afraid of
Mega Racha.
Yes, he doesn't like cockroaches. I don't like cockroaches. I thought it would be cathartic for me.
Does anyone like cockroaches? Really?
I still don't like cockroaches.
Mega Racha, that's fantastic.
I literally emailed or messaged you on Facebook, something like that, where I didn't realize, because in issue #1, oh, look at that.
Nice. Oh, man. Look at that.
So in the book itself, no one yet in issue #1
I may have to order one of
the
those.
Mega Racha. Right. But as soon as then, I think Stephen posted, there's an alternate cover, like a Ghostbusters style logo with this sort of cartoon giant cockroach with the the circle in the line saying no to, and it's like Mega Racha, and I was like, oh, I hope someone actually calls it that somewhere in this series, like even if not in issue #1, like someone has to. That is a great.
We got to start the cult of Mega Racha. I'm gonna put that in here. Cult of Mega Racha.
There was a cult for the fly, thing. So
yeah. So it's he journeys across Mexico, and we're gonna have fun with it. We explore the different aspects, like the mystical parts and things like that. So it'll be a fun story, and it ends in a shocking way.
Well, that's something.
This is. So this did I send you the first? I sent you the first issue, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I sent you. Okay. Yeah. So the second issue is done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the third issue is written. The fourth issue, it's outlined. So I like to be ahead of it, because.
Oh yeah.
Also, I love working with Fabio and Alex, and they both really love working on the book. What's nice is that they're always excited to work on the book, and they'll make they make time to work on the book, and
it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and it's nice having that that consistency.
Yeah.
To it.
100%. And I really love the fact, because this is giant kaiju with matadors taking place in Mexico, and so I love that you brought. I never know actually. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but I love that with matadors you also brought the luchadors or the luchadors. Is it luchadors? Luchador. I mean, the fact that you brought them into it, I was like, oh, I can't believe I didn't see this coming. But it's like, that is perfect.
I mean, I thought if he's going back to Mexico, you can't really.
You got it. You got
you can't really go to Mexico and not tip the hat in homage to the great Santo. I mean,
you have matadors fighting giant monsters. Of course, these guys would as well.
Course,
it's like
I will say that's.
I mean, again, it's such a absolutely necessary idea in this concept that you've created. So
I will say that was a stroke of genius, bringing that milieu back in there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's. And I think the first splash where you see them come in, because Santa always had this like badass car that he was in, you know. Mm-hmm. So the first splash you see him in, they're all a few of them are in these like post-apocalyptic, you know, Mad Max cars, but the main guy who's in like he's called Dr. Destructor, and he's their leader and their doctor.
And the doctor, first aid, right?
A literal doctor.
So he wears his doctor's outfit with the mask and everything, but he's driving like the fancy, you know, the fancy 60s, you know, convertible. So
some good stuff. I have to say it's right up my alley. I'm a kaiju freak. Anything creature feature, giant, you know, creature. I'm there. The worse, the better. And all the other little things you pepper in the world. It's kind of fantastic. You know, it is.
Thank you.
Kind of a glorious hodgepodge, and you know,
congrats. And I do want to reiterate, it is about a matador who actually fights monsters. The matador actually fights monsters. I can't tell you, it's amazing how many times I go to conventions or whatever. It's people will buy the book and they'll come back and they'll be like, "Oh, it's actually about a matador who fights monsters." I'm like, yes.
Did they think it was a monster who was a matador? I mean, like what
he
turns into a wolfman kind of a thing, you know?
Well, I think
so he's a monster matador.
Part of I mean, if you're into kaiju, part of kaiju, it's usually the kaiju fighting the kaiju,
fighting each other,
or robots fighting each other, and that's kind of what sets this apart is that it is literally a man, you know, with a sword and a cape, you know, fighting a monster, which, you know,
and a horse,
and a horse, which is essentially what a matador does. You know, he fights a bull, and it's all about, you know, precision and hitting that, you know, that one spot. So, so it's just that on a bigger scale, and but it's just funny because I think, but once that clicks, people are like, okay, I get it. You know, it's like perfect, great, I love it.
Right. I mean, I think it's such an absurd idea. Like, and the fact that it is such at least the Fabio version, but even the old black and whites up to a point, like you were serious. You were like, no, it's a matador. It's kaiju, big not little monsters, not monsters his size, not really. It's like, these are the big things. And he successfully, he's a legend because of a legend in this post-apocalyptic time because of it. But it's one of those things that it is, I think even when I saw it, like there's that I think in your brain, you're like, this is going to be a one-off. This is going to be an almost satirical take on something. It can't possibly be a real story, but it is, and it works. And the stuff you keep bringing in, I mean, obviously you've had a long time to let this percolate and let this gestate. You know, to some of us, it just seems to have come out of nowhere, but usually always with creators, it's like, no, I did not just wake up today and be like, while falling asleep last night, I was not like, that's genius. Let me write it down. And tomorrow I'll just make the comic. It's like, you know, decade in the making and or more. And here we are now, but it is a really, it's so surprising, even to me, who's been reading it for a while now. It's still surprising how just effortless all the elements click in this goddamn thing. It's such an absurd idea.
It's just a pleasure to read. It's a page turner. It's fun. It's just fun. Just fun. It really is.
100%. So do you want to let's get to what we paired with this bad boy.
Let's get to what we do best.
We're at that time. Do you want to get started? No, I'm gonna go first.
Yeah.
All right. Let me pour a little more because while Steven was talking, I pretty much drank my glass. So let me do a little bit more here. So I paired it with, and I know I gave Dallas a little peek. He doesn't know what this is, but as you can see here, or maybe you can see, this is a very orange kind of wine that you're looking at here. And it is a literal what they call orange wine these days, which is essentially a white grape version of rosé where you do a little soak on white skins rather than red skins, but not a long soak, usually just a small one. This one, I get the feeling it might have been, the bottle does not say how long they soaked this thing, but this is a pretty deep orange. I get the feeling, and the fun part about white grape skins is that they're not really white. They're not even really green. They're kind of muddled in color. So they've got a lot of yellow pigment in them. They've got a little orange, usually a little light, almost pinkish red can be muddled in there. And so what comes out of the wash is this kind of amber looking color. It can be very light. It can be a little darker. This one is dark, and it is, I decided to, so I had a different wine picked out until like, I brought this as a backup. And while we were waiting for you to join us, Stephen, like me and Dallas joined on, he was like, "Did you bring 2 wines again?"
Well, like, see, some backstory here. Every time we do this, Dave unfortunately ends up bringing 2 or 3 choices, which is technically cheating.
Yes, it's technically cheating. So I was like, well, maybe this. So I was like, let me crack this open and taste it right now. So I cracked it open because I'm like, I hadn't even opened this one yet, but I'm like, I think this one might work too. And I tasted it, and I was just like, oh, gee, and just picturing the comic in my head, I'm like, this, you know what? This is better than my other choice. So this is the one I'm going with. I'm not even going to mention the other choice. I'm going to mention this one. So originally, the reason I thought this might work is this is a wine from Baja California. So it is a proper Mexican wine in that regard. And it is this is a Casa Vieja Palomino orange wine made with the Palomino grape. And the Palomino grape, this is, to my knowledge, as a pure 100% varietal, I've never had a pure 100% Palomino wine before. Now, it is a wine used in sherry a lot in Spain. When they grow it in Spain, it's one of the main sherry grapes. So like a dry sherry. And it's funny, Dallas, we were talking earlier, and I was saying how there was like kind of almost this butterscotchy smell underneath everything. And thinking about this in a dessert wine like a sherry, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I can see this is not a dessert wine. This is a purely dry. It's a 2019. It's young for a wine. So it is like, this is a nice dry rosé style ish kind of orange wine, but it's got, not only is it a Mexican grape, it's also, and this is a fun thing that I didn't realize until I looked up the Palomino grape, but the Mexican horses are Palominos, right? And so I'm like, oh shit, he rides a horse. All right, this is like all these wonderful little, like, not that has anything to do with the pairing in terms of flavor and profile and whatnot, but in terms of poetic elements, I was like, look, it's a Mexican grape. It's kind of got the same name as a Mexican horse. I don't know if you're familiar with another comic that's being kickstarted these days called Palomino, Stephen, but there's a comic they've done 3 trade paperbacks so far, and with another one coming out, I'm like, I gotta try this with Palomino and see if it works. It's called Palomino.
Check that out.
But this works really, really well with all the Fabio era Monster Matadors, because it is, I was just telling Dallas, like when you sniff it, it smells dusty and dusky, like a desert highway, like, that kind of thing where it's like cars are driving down it. And this, like we were talking about Mad Maxy kind of post-apocalyptic vistas, where you've got that sort of like, it's roadways. We're all from LA. We know what dry air and soil does. It's like, it's always a little bit in the air. It's always coating everything. You can smell it, you can taste it. And this wine, it has that sort of sandy, ever so slightly metallic on the nose, like very, very dusty kind of smell. It also, then it's also got this sort of like butterscotchy, almost toffee-ish smell. And then it's got this like dried apricot and dusty and flavor to it. It is, and it's got a wonderfully tannic backbone because it's been soaked on those skins. And it made the tannins in those skins. I don't know much about the Palomino grape in terms of book smarts on the Palomino grape, but this is the kind of thing where it's like, it's got that little candied element and fruity element to it that makes it, light and fun. It's not hard. It's kind of like really nice to drink, but it's also got a severity to it. It's got those tannins. It's got that dusty element to it. So, it's got that blend of like, this is a harsh, severe world, but it's also a lot of fun. And I feel like this is, compared to any other wine I've tried with Monster Matadors, even the Riojas, I thought it was a good mix for the Riojas, as we did in our Rioja episode. But honestly, I think this is a better fit if I had to choose between the two of them. So this is my upgrade from that for Monster Matador.
All right, applaud everyone. He actually stuck to one wine.
Stuck to one.
This episode.
Can only call me a cheater so many times before I care.
So what are you drinking, Stephen?
Oh wait, he's bringing a book and pairing it with what he's drinking.
Oh,
so
no,
he's got to go.
Right. That's right.
He's got to go last. He's got to go last.
That's right. All right, guys. So, let's see my notes here. All right. So when I was trying to figure out what to pair with this guy, Monster Matador, first of all, I usually like to go with my experience reading it. What is my experience reading it? And for me, reading this it's the sort of turnability. That's I like to make up phrases when it comes to sort of, vices and hobbies. And it's turnability. And for me, it's the page. I wanted to turn the page as quickly as possible to get to the inertia, continue the momentum, and get to, the sort of payoff. And that's often rare for me because I can put a book down for a year and pick it back up and know exactly where I was. I'm that guy. And it was just extremely satisfying. It had some sort of pulpy depth to it in that way we were talking about with, it actually reminded me a lot of the work of Robert Rodriguez, of course, naturally, duh. Mm-hmm. There's some cinematic overlap there. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
There is a grindhouse. Yeah, there's a grindhouse element to it, which I just adore because it, regardless of the content, it feels a little sort of outsidery, and you got to be in the know, and that's one of these things. That's something I sort of resonate with. That resonates with me with this piece is that I'm sort of in there. It is. I'm a fan who will probably continue buying because it's one, satisfying. Two, it's completely different. It is absurd, but not so absurd that it's sort of just jarring. It is absurd in such a satisfying way. And so I first attempted to pair this with, I thought it might go well with agave, but the agave was just too astringent. It was just, the agave is, I can take a glass. I can take a glass of agave and
for those not in the know, that's a white Italian wine.
Yeah. It just, one glass, I'm good. And then I decided I would go with something that had at its core something traditional, because you do at the core of this piece have something sort of traditional, which is the idea of this sort of matador, and then a little sort of more contemporary tradition, the sort of idea of the kaiju and the monster creature feature. And so I went and found, finally, a bottle of wine that I've been searching for a while. It's a class of wine, I should say. It's called a Ruché. It is, we're getting there. We'll insert, but it's called a Ruché.
We'll insert. Oh, interesting. Okay.
It is
Monferrato. Okay.
It is from the Piemonte region. It is a very small harvest, no more than 2,000 cases, 2,400 cases a year. It has a classic sort of outsider story. It was a very popular grape for about 300 years, and then for about 200 years, it just went out of fashion. No one had the grape. And in the 60s, this parish priest in Monferrato, Don Giacomo Cauda, he came across the grape, fell in love with the Ruché, and devoted his entire life's work, not just his entire life's work, but the work of the entire parish to cultivating this grape. And it's just so, I'm not kidding you. I can drink this entire.
I didn't know what the rest of you wanted to do with your lives, but I have an idea.
Right. It is intensely floral. There's some crushed rose petal, but at the core of this is this geranium. And I don't know if you guys can reference the geranium notes, but they're very, very distinct.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah, it's a very distinct floral scent. And it is a native species to Mexico as well, oddly enough. But it's got some white and some pepper, some white and black pepper. So it's got some spice, but it also has a really strong strawberry component. But most importantly, it has insane quaffability or drinkability, in my opinion. I'm usually a 2-glass guy. I can rarely drink 2 glasses of the same thing back to back. And I'm telling you, I can finish this entire bottle in one sitting, much the way I did with your work here, my friend.
Yes.
So that's my pick. If you guys are unfamiliar with the Ruché di Castagnole, Monferrato, go check it out. Tell me what you think. It's kind of fantastic.
I have got to. I'd never even heard of that. But yeah, Dallas was literally sitting here again before you joined us, and we were standing. He was sipping it and just being like, "I fucking love this wine," and I was like,
"Crazy.
Okay, this is fascinating. What is it?"
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's me.
So, Stephen, and just so the viewers know, every time we have a guest on, we ask them to bring a book that they want to showcase, that they love for whatever reason, and bring a drink. Does not have to be a wine, because we're not going to limit the show to only wine drinkers. That would just be too much. But a drink that they think pairs well with it and why. So, Stephen, take it away.
What'd you bring, Stephen? The Bible?
Well, I was gonna bring. I was gonna bring Spawn, but
oh God.
No, I was gonna bring a different book. I wound up seeing the Indiana Jones movie today.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of I was
gonna bring another thoughts.
Yeah,
on the new Indiana Jones movie.
On the new.
I mean, I liked it. It was a half hour too long. I think they could have cut some out, but but the character stuff I thought was.
It was the fond farewell. They needed to fit.
It was the fond farewell. I mean, but it kind of, they could have, they could have cut. There was just like so many.
The farewell party could have been shorter.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. It wasn't, it's funny. I watched Crystal Skull again.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's not terrible, but it was interesting. You really do see the difference between the Spielberg aesthetic, which is kind of, as much as this movie tries, it's a really difficult thing to capture, because it's more than just the framing of the shots. It's what he gets
magic.
out of the actors.
It's his brand of
and
magic.
It really is magic. I was just
gonna say on that. How long has it been since you've seen the movie Poltergeist way back in the day?
A couple of years. I love Poltergeist.
You love it, but that's fantastic. One of those movies that they're like, Spielberg only produced it, but then of course there's a lot of hearsay about how he kind of essentially direct. But you feel it. It feels so Spielbergian. You're like, what is going on? How is this a horror movie that feels this Spielbergian? It's bizarre. But yes, that he brings something to the things he's involved in that no one else can exactly capture. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but Crystal Skull, the thing that kind of threw it off for me, and I think kind of they should have done it a different way and not had the movie. And I'm going to spoil it because I don't, it's been 15 years now. But at the end when the temple collapses and then you see the flying saucer come up, and I get it. I get why they did that. It's the 50s. It's everything. But that image of Indy just watching this flying saucer go, and you could say it's interdimensional beings how many times you want. To me, that just took the movie out of the realm.
Yeah.
It was one step too far. You know
All right,
what I mean?
I actually just took my headphones off because I didn't want to hear the spoiler. So.
Are you serious? Have you not seen Crystal Skull?
No, I
I'm
haven't
talking
seen it
about.
yet.
Oh, it's
There's
okay.
nothing to really spoil, but I will say,
it's not really spoiling. Yeah.
No, but I will say, yeah, it should have been a little more, because the thing that makes all the other Indiana Jones movies work is that slight aura of mystery, where it's like, yes, it's the Ark, but what is it, and
he
how
never
does it work?
He never sees the ghosts.
Exactly.
He never sees them. He never, right.
Exactly. And same
There's
with the
always
Grail.
that,
like, the rules of the Grail are a little up in the air of like, but what is this fucking thing, and why is it what it is? And it's not concrete. And I think the spaceship was too concrete. I agree with you on that.
It was too much. Yeah, it was too much. But anyway. So I was going to bring a different book by these creators. I was going to bring a book called The Eternaut, but which is fantastic. It was put out by Fantasgraphic a few years ago. But this is it's a book called Mort Cinder.
Ooh.
It's
I've not even heard of this.
Neither.
The writer is Héctor Oesterheld. The artist is Alberto Breccia.
Oh, Breccia.
They are Argentinian. So I brought an Argentinian Malbec.
Of course.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
And the story is about a guy, Mort Cinder, who is sort of like he's an immortal. And it's a series of like kind of short stories that, and in each one it's an antique dealer kind of comes across an antique, and Mort sort of tells the story of his time in that place of history. Ooh, so it goes all over the place, from Roman times to all throughout history, and each story it's really great. So it kind of obviously Indiana Jones, but the artwork on this, and I don't know how much you can pull off.
And you said Alberto Breccia, right?
Alberto Breccia. If you look at the artwork, this is the guy that, and it says on the back here too, but this is the guy that, back in the 80s, these books were no one really knew about these books. It's the same as you hear stories in Hollywood where directors would literally have French graphic novels of Mobius and all the great European sci-fi artists, and just, comic book artists would get books by guys like Alberto Breccia. The things that he does with ink it's magic. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But this it's a really fun
great detail.
The writing awesome. The writing is fantastic.
I gotta look this up.
Seriously,
Oesterheld was really interesting. The other book I was going to bring was called The Eternaut, which is also drawn by Breccia, and it's Enter E-T-E-R N-A-U-T. And it's a sort of a sci-fi thing where aliens invade, and there's this snow, but they can't go outside because the snow will kill them, and it just sucks you in, and it's kind of I forget what it's called, but it's kind of about nuclear war and communism and whatnot. And the writer
that makes sense.
And the writer Oesterheld was later disappeared by the government, him and his family, because he was.
This is right up my alley.
So not just the book, but also just the whole history of the artist and whatever. It all feeds into it. There's just a lot of layers to it, and it's just really really great stuff. But this is Mort Cinder. They're all published by Fantasgraphic. They have an Alberto Breccia library.
Nice.
There's two editions of the Eternaut. There's the first edition, which is I think it was done as a comic strip, and then there's a second edition that they did, but I don't think it was never really finished. It's a thinner volume, but the one to get is the original. It is in South America. It is considered one of the great one of the great strips, and it's very well known there. Very influential. Awesome. But definitely, and I would say that this Malbec, this NORTON 2014 has a very berry flavor, which contrasts the sometimes bitterness of or mortality.
There you go. And I would say, to do a contrast, Malbec is good because it is much more of your, in terms of Argentinian wines, like easy drinking kind of a thing.
The nice thing about this is that it almost the files they got are, it almost looks like it's printed from the originals, because you see the brush strokes in it, which is just fascinating, because he the cross hatching, whatever, but he's using sponges, he's using everything to get these just crazy textures.
It's at least 30 years old.
I don't know if you can see this. Oh, it's from the 60s, 1962.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
look
at that, like the foliage there.
Right.
Just, there's just so much going on.
It's like the kind of thing, if you saw an actual hand painting on a wall somewhere in a gallery, like that's the kind of texture.
Yeah, it's just beautiful stuff. So
did he do, maybe you don't know, but did he do
Spider-Man?
H.P. Lovecraft?
Yes, he did. And those are amazing too. Yes, he did H.P. Lovecraft. Breccia,
that makes sense. That art is perfect.
Yeah. I mean, the way he creates atmosphere and is it's incredible.
Amazing.
And what's great about, what's cool about this art is that he's one of those guys where a lot of people are influenced by him. A lot of people try to replicate him, but it's so unique to him. It's so original that you just can't. You can't find it anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like. You got to go back to the source.
Fantastic.
What was the fate of the artist? Did he actually survive to old age?
Breccia, I believe, survived. Yeah. But the writer, probably because he was a writer and the words were coming out of his mouth. But,
there you go.
Right. That the artist might have been too popular. I don't know. Also, that tends to be the way
he was. The writer was very popular too.
That's
Breccia passed away in 1993. So he
Oh.
He was born. He was born. He was born in 1974. So he was.
Oh, that's young. Jesus.
74. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, he was 74 years old.
He was 74.
Oh, I thought you said he was born in 74.
No. Yeah, he drew the book in 62, was born in 74, and died in 93.
Sorry. Not putting the pieces together.
No. So I it's been a while since I read the essay about the writer about Oesterheld, but it's really kind of like tragic, but it really kind of
it is.
It adds a bit of weight and layer to the work that you realize really what he was saying, what he was getting across, and not only that, but why it also connected so much with people, with people who were being at the time oppressed, by a government like that. So it's really kind of fortunate that the work has not only survived but was able to flourish also at the time and inspire, and inspire those people, the people who are living through that. So
fantastic. Good choice. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with that choice.
Seriously. And I think we're both.
I felt like I had to. I felt like I had to bring it. You know what I mean? I was like,
and that's coming from two guys who've seen a lot of comics.
Yeah, and I've talked to Dave. I've watched the show. I know you guys. I can kind of get a sense of the taste, but I know you guys have. I know Dave has a deep.
We kicked it off with Bacchus for fuck's sake. So
I was telling Dave, I was like, because literally Bacchus is my favorite comic.
No way.
He was saying that.
I love Bacchus. It's brilliant. And Dave was saying about how he loves wine, because no one I know has ever read Bacchus. I'm like, dude, have you heard of Bacchus? And he's like, actually, and I'm like, wow,
that's what we're launching with.
That's right.
Excellent.
So we're gonna have to return to it, because man, that first episode is so rough. We gotta give it a better episode. But it's yeah.
It's funny because my wife.
Oh yes, I think he told me about this too. He's got something special here. Yeah.
All right. You like special.
Drum roll.
Oh wow!
Oh, we can see. That's
Is that
Eddie Campbell original.
Campbell? Oh my goodness, man!
Yeah, that's so
wow.
beautiful.
So just to tell you how nobody reads Bacchus.
Right.
I was friendly with his art dealer Peter Berkmo, who works for the Beguiling. I met him at Comic-Con.
Okay.
And I was so obsessed with Bacchus at the time. This was probably 2005 or something. And I was like, I need to get a page. I would love to get a page. And he's like, yeah, let me ask Eddie. Eddie, said okay, and he wrote this really complimentary letter that I had, chosen some really, really prime page from the book. But he also, and then he wrote me a note with the page that he sent me, was that it was actually the first piece of interior art that he had ever sold from the book, that anyone had ever inquired about purchasing.
Come on.
I forgot.
The covers are out there.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it's this is going back to how we started the show, when you talk about comics and marketing and there are certain books and certain that should be evergreen, that
absolutely,
whoever owns or whatever should be. This is, I think it's Top Shelf who does, From Hell. And I know they put out the Bacchus Omnibus, but like so many things, it's like, here's Bacchus, here's this. Yeah. Okay. Next month, it's another thing. I mean, this is a book that literally, I really like it. It's just, it's pure
There's
comics.
nothing else like it.
There's nothing else like it. It's a historical thing. It's gods, it's comedy, it's romance, it's it's eyeball kid. I mean, it's superhero epic. It's everything. It's everything.
Every arc is something a little different because it was really Eddie Campbell exploring this whole thing, and like his interests changed over time, and he just made the book what his interests were. Right. And yet it still feels, because I read them as I waited for those omnibuses before I ever read them, mostly because I couldn't, it was so disparate and difficult to find all the pieces when they were all these individual trades or issues or whatnot. And I couldn't even make sense of them. I'm like, wait, so this special one shot, how does that fit in with this trade? And they'd all been re-released in different numbers. And I was like, I'm so confused. And then these two gargantuan fucking omnibuses, both of them over 500 pages, came out and collect the whole thing in order. And I'm like, finally sold. Let's do this. And it's wonderful, but it feels of a piece, but it is like, as you go, you never know what you're getting on the next page.
Never know. And, and it's great in that also, like, a lot of great work. He was responding to a lot of what was going on at the time in the market.
He was an artist of his time. Absolutely.
He was. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and Alan Moore shows up and he weaves that in there. I mean, there's a page with Rob Liefeld shows up. I mean, he's responding to the market and the time, and it's just it's really like, it's great work. And yet, hey, we're still pushing, Dark Knight Returns, which is great, but Bacchus.
With Bacchus, I know.
But it sucks because, I mean, there are great works like Bacchus, like, Mort Cinder, that don't really get, I feel like comics need to really kind of be like, hey, you know what, we can actually do this, this is right, and we've done it, and it's definitely a book.
Right. And as much as Mobius doesn't need more people cheering him, because he's one that people really do, but recently I've been hearing Inkle is another one that a lot of people are like, how have I never read this before? And I'm like, I mean, it's really these are
but I mean, up until Humanoid, and thank God Humanoids took over their English publishing, because up until that point you could not read the Inkle. You could not read. I mean, even Mobius, even Mobius outside of the Inkle is very, people want to read it, but there's some. It hasn't really been reprinted, but they've done a really great job of keeping the Meta Barons in print, of keeping all these things in print and getting them out there. Because it's the Inkle for the longest time was one of those books that you would hear about, but there was absolutely no way to read it. And if you found it in a comic book shop, it was $100 for like, you know, one of the
48 pages or something like that.
Part one that Epic put out, you know, 30 years ago.
Right.
And it was just prohibitive, you know. A lot of that stuff, a lot of those a lot of books like that, which have now
the classic works of world comics, you know, where it's like when you really start bringing them all in, it's like there's more, because I think the American, or at least for us, the American market, but probably comic wise, the American market is the one that proliferates the most because our publishers have stayed the course for so long. And absorbed each other. When someone goes under, usually there's like a Marvel or DC to absorb that and to continue pumping those graphic novels and collections out all over the world. But then when it comes to even just UK comics, can be actually kind of, they go out of print, and you're just like, a decade will pass and a whole generation will not know about these works. You know, just recently, Brian Talbot was doing a new Luther Arkwright graphic novel, but trying to hunt down the old stuff was like weirdly expensive, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is not an obscure comic. Like, how is this so difficult? So it's interesting, it's a problem.
And I mean, I know you're a film guy. I'm a film guy. I love film. I love the history of film, and film is made better and more appreciated by knowing and experiencing the history of it. You know, it really adds to the experience. You know,
it does.
And the influences, because
and the influences,
the great directors
doesn't have that.
Not as much, but it's like, as you were saying, people like artists who are in the know, who like absorb that, who are really like going out and finding these artists and getting inspired by them. Same thing with filmmakers. Like, when you really get a great filmmaker and you ask them, how did you come up with X, Y, or like what made it, was done somewhere else, something obscure that the general public isn't aware of, but they ate that shit up, and then they brought it into context for a new audience. But it's like, when you know those influences, when you can see the whole arc of how we all as a global culture, you know, keep sharing and exchanging these ideas and building new things with them, I mean, that's where the truest appreciation comes from, because you see it all as like this living circle of a thing, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's where
a love letter to comics.
That's beautiful. That's where I wish there was more comics journalism. You know.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's the one thing, and you know, the Comics Journal still does it, but you know, I mean, it's a very stripped down from what they used to be. But it's really it's like the one thing I feel like is missing from comics is that sense of appreciation of what came before and how it relates to the present, because it becomes sort of like a secret club of like, oh yeah, I read this, but you know, it's not been in print for 40 years. I've got a shelf of Mobius stuff that, you know, was published 40 years ago that has not been published since then, that we can talk. I mean, The Long Tomorrow, which basically influenced science fiction from that moment forward. Blade Runner is The Long Tomorrow. The aesthetic, the city, you know, The Fifth Element. I mean, when The Fifth Element came out, no one knew what the fuck the Inkle was, unless you lived in France. Right. Which was great for Luc Besson because it made him look like a genius. But it was literally, you know, taken from Valerian and the Inkle, you know. You know, there's
even I have a soft spot for the Valerian movie.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
It's a beautiful disaster.
It is.
It is. But there's so much in it that there's something there. So much. There's like, oh.
I mean, he clearly loves and it's a wonderful series, but he kind of like, dude, it's like, wait, just make one movie. Like, he threw like everything in there. He just couldn't help himself. You know?
This is my one shot.
This is my one shot, you know, and that was his one shot.
Well, I feel like that's always the problem. I shouldn't call it a problem, but that's the divide of comics in specific, is so many other mediums and so many other ways in which you take in story. Like, a lot of audiences or other writers, other creators, it's like comics are kind of everything in the kitchen sink of a medium, and so many the creators who are committed, they do things like the Inkhole where it's like there's so much out, or Valerian. I mean, how many graphic novels is fucking Valerian in all told? And I mean, there's so much to it, and there's so many ideas in it that it becomes like people have a hard time sifting through it and being like, how do you adapt this into a movie? And it's like, I mean, yeah, good fucking luck. It's not, that is a hard thing to do, but the comic itself, one thing that I actually own all of Valerian now on digital only, unfortunately, because it was just too much, but it was all, I'm going to forget the name of the European comic app. They just closed
I don't know the name, but I know what you're talking
about. They just closed the American side of it. You got to keep everything you already bought, and I'd already bought all of the Inkhole on it, but they were like, we need to close down like selling to any new sales to America, and we're just going to have the European app going forward, which is such it killed me. But I bought all of the Inkhole, I bought all of Valerian, I have lots of different European collections all on digital, so I can go back and wade through them at any time. But I mean, there's so much out there that it's a shame it's not more readily available and easily available. Yeah. All right, guys. That was a great way to end it. That was brilliant.
This ranks as one of my favorite episodes so far.
Awesome. Cool. No, this is fun. Absolutely. I love it. I love talking like comics and stuff. Stuff like this is great because it's the stuff like, like I said, like you say Bacchus and people are like, who are you talking about?
Right. Well, my some of my favorite, like if I had to rank my top 10 comics of all time, when people ask me that, I often have to think for a little bit because I'm like, the actual top 5 of that top 10 is stuff no one's heard of.
No,
and I'm just sort of.
Do I tell them I love Youngblood?
Right, and I'm like, do I tell them number 8? Because number 8 is something that like at least half of comics people know. But like my number 1, 2, and 3, I'm like, literally, I've not met it unless I put it in their hands. No one I've talked to has ever read these fucking things. So I'm just like. Yeah. So, but in any event, good luck at San Diego Comic-Con. By the time this is airing, the Kickstarter.
I just got back.
Yeah.
Oh, you just got back. The Kickstarter launched on July 12th. We still have at least a week to go. So people, there will be a link down below.
Whatever he was selling.
And of course, Steven has had the link that you can type into on screen this whole time. You can just type that into a tab in your browser. And we'll have a link down below as well. And we wish you all the best. I don't think Monster Matador needs too much luck anymore. I feel like it's doing pretty gangbusters these days.
No, I mean,
I know Kickstarter is still, you sweat bullets. It's such you age every time you do it. I know. Look, I feel it.
I've got some great. That's from Kickstarter. I did not have that when I started doing Kickstarter.
And tell us where we can get this sweatshirt, Steven.
I'm only 22 years old. Where can you get the sweatshirt? On the Kickstarter, we're going to have a t-shirt with, that design that was on the back.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice.
We're going to have the Check Your Head t-shirt.
Very nice. Very nice.
And if you message me, I will tell you how to get the sweatshirt.
Done.
So the sweatshirts, I have some. I just haven't put them on the Kickstarter yet.
Okay.
I want to see how the t-shirts do, but I do have stock. So if you're interested, let me know and we'll.
I think that's going to be a very popular item, at least in my household.
You heard it here first, folks. The Wine and Comics Pairing Show. This is why you watch us for the merch.
Yeah. So, but if anyone wants the sweatshirt, just if you back the Kickstarter or whatever, just message me and we'll make it happen. It's just one of those things where just in terms of like stock and cost, for sweatshirts, it's a big investment. So I'd rather I kind of, at least right now, I kind of want to, but if you're interested, it's easy to get.
Done. All right.
Awesome. All right, guys. What for outtakes? For outtakes, let's go back to this and say how much I cheat.
Dave is a cheat. He can rarely ever decide on a single wine for this wine and comics pairing show. Notice
two glasses this time around, baby.
Yet again, he's going to have 2 one white, one red, maybe white, definitely a red, maybe a rosé. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's your guy. That's your wine and comics pairing guy who could never actually pair.
I pair so many things. I over pair.
God, I love this wine. Jeez Louise. This has been fantastic.
Did you is this something that you only tried for this pairing, or is this something that you
honestly?
Okay.
It's something that's been on my radar for a while. And it's difficult to find. It's actually pretty damn difficult to find. But yeah, I'm loving it. Love it. And only roughly 2,000 cases a year. Ooh, what do we got? Orange? What is that? Is it orange or pink? What's the?
It is. Yeah. Is it kind of hard? Kind of hard. There you go.
Okay.
Wait.
Oh, it's kind
you
of
know what?
brandy.
That's. Yeah. It's orange.
Oh, it's orange. Okay.
But it's a nice. It's a decently dark orange. You know, it's got. It's not a. Yeah. You know, I would, if I was seeing someone drinking this from afar, I would suspect it was a dessert wine. You know, it just has that like nice, like dark color to it.
It actually looks like a tawny port.
Ooh. Oh shit. I think this was my backup. It might beat my number one. This one, you know what? I think I'm going to pick this one. No, you know what? I'm happy. I'm going to go with this one, and we're not even going to hear about the other one. How's that?
All right.
Because this is the one, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What's up?
Well, you're going to find out, no, aren't you?
Nice. What are the notes?
We got it. Oh, it's very dusty, which is really interesting. Okay. But it's got this. It is definitely there's definitely dried apricot in there.
Okay.
With like some dandelion. So
like a wild
sunflowery kind of a thing. Wild sunflowery. It's got this dusty tannic structure to it.
Okay.
I mean, when you smell it, you know, it smells like dry desert soil.
Ooh,
like, I mean, like that. Literally like driving down a highway, but like with all the dust in the air, and you're just like.
So there's that arid, minerally kind of.
Yeah. And just that, like, God, I don't know. It's trying to place the flavor. If there was such a thing as bittersweet white chocolate, it might be that.
Bittersweet white chocolate. Okay.
Like, it's got that cocoa butter aftertaste, but it ain't sweet, you know, in any way, shape, or form. So it's not candied like you're used to tasting. Yeah.
Okay.
There's definitely a cocoa butter element there.
Seems very tropical. Everything you're describing here is
kind of. There's a tropical quality to it, but you know, it's not like pina colada tropical. You know what I mean? Again, it's very dry. It's wonderfly and it's got a nice tannic backbone to it too. So it's got a severity in a sense. Mm-hmm. Certainly not severe like a deep red wine would be, but
great.
Oh gee, but I mean it's that skin contact. I don't, you know what? Let me see if it says on the bottle how much skin contact this thing got. Because I feel like No. Okay. I knew there was an orange wine that I read. Like I bought one at one point. I thought it might have been this one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. But the bottle. Okay. You know how in a red wine, especially if it's older, you can, as you drain it, you can see like it's stained, like all that sediment almost has like stained and completely flattened against the side of the inside of the bottle. And this bottle is stained. Can you see this here? It is stained orange.
Oh, wow.
And it's only a 2019.
Huh.
So I mean, this has got some heft to it, man.
Interesting.
Yeah, I got to remember to say all that shit once we actually. I mean, we're recording now, so it kind of counts.
I'm shrinking.
This is my problem with when I'm hosting for work and I want to sit. Like, I can never get my camera to set up. Like, I always have to lift my chair up to the point where my feet are kind of off the ground. And I'm just like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. But it frames me properly. And, like, when I actually go down to where I want to be and my hands on the keyboard are just right, I'm a little like this in the, I'm like down here and kind of like looking up. And I'm like, nah, it doesn't work. God damn it.
Yeah, I'm jealous of everyone. I'm jealous of everyone that doesn't live in LA that has like a dedicated room to their thing.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes,
where they can have like their cameras mounted on the wall, and
exactly.
And it's like the studio setup, which is set up all the time, and you never have to, like, my phone is my camera, so it's like it comes down as soon as we're done recording every time.
I've got to set this all.
Oh yeah, we know.
My computer is on books and the light is
exactly.
I
have a shoebox right now.
Yeah. All right, there we go. That's better light. Okay, I'm good, I think.
And as pretty as this background is, like, this whole bullshit is set up from scratch every goddamn time. Like, this is not how this room. This is like, this room is meant to be used. It can't just be like, this is my setup and situation. So anyway, all right, we ready to go?
Let's do it.
He's like, check. He's like, hair check, makeup. Okay, good. All right, I'm gonna put you back out of the room for a quick minute. Ba-bum. All right, and I'm going to actually, to get us started, I really like this when it's just two people. This is perfect when it's two people.
It is kind of perfect.
Yeah, right? the three people starts to get a little
three
almost
works for
like
the guests, of course, but
right, like as people start crowding in, it's almost like one of those dark social satires in a movie where it's like all the talking heads like boom, 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 and I'm like, no, you can't take that seriously. That just looks like you're making fun of people talking online. Okay.